way back when the vast majority of the world hadn't even heard of Bitcoin yet. The CIA was looking into it. Through the censorship and the propaganda, they've literally hijacked Bitcoin.
Early Bitcoin proponent turned villain Roger Ver was on Tucker Carlson yesterday, talking about his belief that the original vision of Bitcoin has been hijacked by intelligence agencies. Today we dive into the truth behind these claims and get to the bottom of the years-old debate over Bitcoin's block size, decentralization, privacy, and whether we should all be buying things with our Bitcoin instead of saving in it. Is Bitcoin a competitor for the US dollar, gold, or both? Early Bitcoin investor and libertarian Roger Ver was on Tucker Carlson yesterday, and he spread some very unfortunate FUD about Bitcoin to Carlson's millions of viewers. And I'm here to set the record straight. Now, Ver is being extradited back to the US on charges of tax evasion, and he took the opportunity on Carlson to rehash old propaganda he spread during the Bitcoin block size war in 2017. The block size war, for those that don't know, was a major debate within the Bitcoin community between 2015 and 2017 over how to scale Bitcoin. One side, the large blockers, the side that Ver was on, wanted to increase the block size limit to allow more transactions per block, aiming for faster and cheaper payments on the base layer. The other side, the small blockers, argued that increasing the block size would harm decentralization by making it harder for regular users to run full nodes, leading to centralization. The dispute culminated in a contentious fork, creating Bitcoin Cash with larger block sizes, which Ver still supports and advocates for today, while Bitcoin retained the original smaller block size as Satoshi originally intended. The small block approach prioritized long-term security and decentralization, relying on second-layer solutions like the Lightning Network for scaling. The war underscored the importance of Bitcoin's design trade-offs and community consensus. Now, with that out of the way, let's watch a clip of Roger Ver on Tucker Carlson, where he outlines his theory that the original vision of Bitcoin was hijacked by nefarious actors and intelligence agencies. Now, I'll leave the whole clip to play and give my thoughts and commentary on the back end.
There was no doubt in my mind whatsoever that people were going to start using Bitcoin as money. And so I thought, oh, this is every libertarian's dream come true. Suddenly now we're going to have a choice. And I'm not against the US dollar or the yen or the euro. I'm pro-choice. I think people should be able to choose what form of money they want to use. And whether it's the dollar, the euro, or the yen, or Bitcoin, or some other cryptocurrency out there, I think people deserve the right to have that choice. And I want to see that enabled. And so when Bitcoin came along, the first step was for me to buy a bunch of Bitcoin. I bought my first Bitcoin when they were less than $1 each. And then my business, memorydealers.com, became the first established business in the entire world to start accepting Bitcoin for payments. And we started advertising, we accept Bitcoin. Not a single customer paid us initially in Bitcoin, but it got worldwide media attention for the first time. And I remember it was in June of 2011. And in the course of 2, maybe 3 weeks, the price of Bitcoin went from around $3 a Bitcoin to $30 a Bitcoin. And that was the first time in the history of Bitcoin up to that point in which it started to get some worldwide media attention. And what an interesting thing happened. So the main discussion forum where everybody up to that point was talking about Bitcoin was a website called bitcointalk.org. And suddenly when it was getting some media attention around the world and international newspapers, this forum that had worked wonderfully up to that point where people could discuss things became flooded with bots, just posting comments that were just, fluff and made literally, they DDoSed the forum to the point that it was unusable. And anybody that came there because they heard about Bitcoin in the media that week, they weren't able to learn about it because there was just so many posts saying, buy, sell, oh no, and just saying nothing of any substance whatsoever. So somebody out there literally made the forum unusable as early as 2011. And around that same time, we already know that the CIA was interested in Bitcoin because they were asking different Bitcoin developers to, hey, can you explain Bitcoin to us? So way back when the vast majority of the world hadn't even heard of Bitcoin yet, the CIA was looking into it, and somebody was actively preventing it from spreading as quickly as it otherwise could have by shutting down the forum effectively when so many new people were coming to Bitcoin to learn about it for the first time. And in the early days, everybody knew, though, Bitcoin was supposed to be money for the world. Bitcoin was supposed to be used for payments as peer-to-peer cash for the world. And that's how people were using it. And, I was doing payroll in it, and I was paying my suppliers overseas. I hosted the first Bitcoin meetup ever in China about it. Like, I was really doing my best to spread this all over the world, including, paying for national radio ads for it. Like, it was really, really spreading. But then later, in, I believe, 2012, a person using the name John Dillon, who claimed to work for intelligence, spent more than $10,000, I forget the exact amount, but a significant sum of money to start producing propaganda to trick people into thinking that by keeping the blocks on Bitcoin small, it would make it more decentralized. And literally the exact opposite of the truth, the exact opposite of the way Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, designed it and promoted it, and the exact opposite of the way that people were using it. And nobody believed the propaganda initially. But then later, this giant wave of censorship took place. Anonymous people that nobody knows their real names managed to get control of all the main discussion platforms for Bitcoin. And then suddenly, one day overnight, nobody was even allowed to advocate for Bitcoin being used as money. And they censored anybody that tried to do that. And initially, everybody saw through it. But then everybody that came to Bitcoin after the censorship began, they just started believing it. And today, the main people that are out there promoting Bitcoin, they literally say, oh, Bitcoin shouldn't compete with the US dollar. Bitcoin, you shouldn't use it as money. You shouldn't use it to pay for things. Like Bitcoin is just a digital asset. You should just hold it. And it's the exact opposite. They've through the censorship and the propaganda, they've literally hijacked Bitcoin. And I literally wrote an entire book about it. You can find more at hijackingbitcoin.com. It's available on Amazon and everywhere else. And lo and behold, just a couple of weeks after the book is published, I get arrested, and now I'm facing 109 years in federal prison for having exposed the way in which Bitcoin was hijacked. And you can think all day long that the new version of Bitcoin that people are promoting is better. Okay, but you can't admit that it wasn't hijacked. And luckily now we have thousands of different cryptocurrencies, and I support competition, right? I was never a Bitcoin maximalist or any other cryptocurrency maximalist. I'm a utilitarian freedom maximalist. Whatever gives the most utility and is the most useful for the most people around the world to improve their lives and create more economic freedom that leads to more economic growth, that's what I want to be out there and promote to the world.
Now, before I get into the details of why Ver's vision for Bitcoin has been economically flawed from the beginning, I'd like to unpack the nonsense in the narrative he spins. His first piece of evidence that Bitcoin has been hijacked is that after the swift run-up in price from $1 to $30 per coin in the spring of 2011, the Bitcoin talk forum that was primarily used by early developers became mysteriously flooded by bots. He later makes the insinuation that it was the CIA who made the forum unusable. Now, I'm going to use Occam's razor for this one, which says that the simplest explanation is often the correct one. Unless Ver has evidence that someone nefarious purposefully flooded the original Bitcoin talk forum with spam in order to stop the flow of information about the technology, the simplest explanation is right out in the open. As he said himself, Bitcoin was getting mainstream media attention for the first time with its big run-up in price, and that would naturally bring about opportunists, gamblers, and scammers to flood the forums. Which is not any different than today. I'm sure many of you can see the whack-a-mole situation we have in our comments on YouTube with scam bots promoting random crypto pump and dumps trying to take advantage of new unsuspecting investors. Public service announcement, please ignore the scam comments that we're not able to manually delete fast enough. Roger goes on to insinuate that the only reason the big blockers like himself lost the block size war was because of a broad censorship and propaganda campaign that tricked everyone into believing small blocks were better and integral for the network's decentralization. He also claims that this goes against Satoshi's original vision and design, which is easy to debunk since the Bitcoin we use today uses smaller blocks as Satoshi originally designed and intended. Ver has been pushing this narrative since he was a huge proponent of big blocks in 2017 and was one of the main people responsible for the contentious hard forks that caused the creation of Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, and others, which all continued to swiftly trend to zero in Bitcoin terms. The fact is that Roger's vision for Bitcoin was always economically flawed, and he has never gotten over the fact that the majority of Bitcoin owners rejected his vision as flawed. The free market that he claims to be a huge proponent of worked against him, and he's still salty about it. The fundamental flaw in Ver's economic vision is that he assumes that money must be primarily a medium of exchange. He doesn't acknowledge that all market-based monies must evolve and monetize through a store of value phase first, before they can be suitable as a medium of exchange. Quoting the excellent essay from 2018, The Bullish Case for Bitcoin by Vijay Boyapati, money throughout history always evolved in the following 4 stages: collectible, store of value, medium of exchange, and finally unit of account. Bitcoin is still in the early stages of being widely accepted as a viable and superior store of value. Once it's reached a much higher price level closer to its true value, only then will it become more suitable as a medium of exchange and unit of account. This is true for the simple reason that people can clearly see the opportunity cost of spending their Bitcoin when it makes a huge leap up in value every couple years. It makes much more sense to save in it during this phase of its monetization than it is to use it as a medium of exchange or to price other goods in it as a unit of account. On top of the flawed economic lens in which he viewed Bitcoin, Ver allied himself with some of the worst scammers in the space, namely Fake Toshi or Craig Wright, which he now publicly regrets. Ver is now trying to reignite his propaganda campaign from 2017 by claiming his arrest is somehow related to this grand conspiracy against Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. My personal view is that Ver was just too early to Bitcoin and got impatient with how slow the natural monetization process was going. Watching the whole interview shows how disgruntled and angry he is at governments and their mismanagement of money. And in that, I can agree with him. But instead of jumping on board, advocating for it, and letting the natural monetization process take place, he attempted to strong-arm it into going quicker without taking into account the negative consequences. The fact that Bitcoin isn't yet used widely as a medium of exchange isn't some grand conspiracy by the CIA to trick people into a false narrative and thus save the US dollar. As I've said in previous videos, Bitcoin is a Trojan horse for a better economic system. The fact that banks, institutions, corporations, and now even governments are adopting it just further proves that this theory is unfolding right before our very eyes. They are wheeling the horse right through the gates of Troy as we speak. And once Bitcoin continues to rise exponentially in value, people who see their wealth sway primarily in Bitcoin will begin to want to spend it on goods and services more and more. Money is just a means to an end, and not an end unto itself. This already happens as Bitcoin continues to rise. More and more long-term holders who have seen their net worth explode and weigh heavily in Bitcoin become sellers to fund their lifestyles. This also has a natural distribution effect, spreading the Bitcoin out from few large holders to many new savers. As Bitcoin's value increases, layered scaling solutions will continue to get better, which allow for faster, cheaper, and more private transactions to take place. Now, there's a big proponent of Bitcoiners that are what I will call accelerationists. They tend to be very angry with the status quo and the mismanagement of money by governments and central banks. And trust me, I get it. I spent a large part of the early stages of my Bitcoin journey with this same anger. My advice to those people is to accept the things that you can't change and focus on what you can control in your life. Buying, educating, and evangelizing the superiority of Bitcoin as money for humanity to those around you is a good thing. But we must realize that this massive change in the way we interact as humans will not happen overnight. It's a process, and Bitcoin's open and transparent nature means we can't stop the likes of BlackRock or the US government from adopting it. All we can do is help advance and develop new tools to improve the ecosystem and educate others on why a world with Bitcoin as its money is more ethical and supports individual human flourishing. So don't be like Roger Ver. Don't attempt to play God and force the system to change. Use the gift that is Bitcoin, a more ethical and fair form of money, to continue to educate those you love about it and let the dominoes fall where they fall. Try to spend more of your time and energy being a better person and strengthening your relationships. That's how we help to change the world. That's it for today. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Like this video and maybe share it with those you think could be led astray by Ver's interview on Carlson, and subscribe to the channel for more high signal Bitcoin content. Thanks for watching, and remember, TikTok next block.